Welcome, everyone, to the Scaling Smart podcast, where we bring together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators who discuss key insights, strategies, and their experiences that drive success both for themselves and their customers. I'm Billy Mitchell, your host, and today I'm excited to introduce a special guest, Will Curran, the founder of Where's the Future? WTF is a paid for community and media platform centered on exploring the intersection of emerging technology, innovation, and human experience. Through its podcasts, content, and network, it helps professionals and curious minds stay ahead of the tech trends, interpret disruptive change, and connect in a forward-looking conversation space. Will, I'm really excited to chat with you. How are you doing today?
Thanks so much for having me, Billy. I'm doing awesome. Life is great. Living large and laughing easy, as my fiance says.
That's good. I love hearing that. Well, as a reminder to you as well as our audience, we're going to break this up into three sections. We want to talk to you about your organization as well as just your background. How'd you get to where you're at? Just in our pre conversation, I think there's a lot of interesting things that we can dive into. So I'm excited to explore that. Also, the industry that you're working in. Again, what's cool and unique about this is I believe might be the first time I've interviewed on this podcast or somebody who's retired but still heavily active. So I'm excited to see where this conversation goes within that part. And then because you've been part of so many different organizations, obviously had a successful exit, maybe more. I want to talk to you about growth and scale. What are some of the keys that you had? Tactics that you've performed that helped you to grow your organizations to a point where you were able to successfully exit them. So, with that, are you ready to get started?
Let's dive on in.
Awesome. Well, hey, I know I kind of gave you an opening, but I'd like to hear your elevator pitch. What is WTF? Why'd you start it? What do you guys do?
For sure. Yeah, I can. I mean, it's pretty simple concept to understand. I mean, basically, the way I would explain is like if you don't like social media algorithms, but you still love tech and you love talking to other people about tech and like, smart home things and, wearables and where things are going and kind of like just like talking about like new exciting things from solar to cars to whatever it may be, but you just don't want to be bogged down by an algorithm. I think that's what Where's the Future is all about. It's a private community where you can basically post things, talk to other people, but not feel that like weird feeling you feel whenever you're on LinkedIn or you're on Instagram or if you're still on Facebook for some reason. It's basically like if you feel that icky feeling around social media, but you love tech, this is where it's basically at for you.
That's awesome. All right. I've got a lot that I want to go in there, especially into some of the emerging technologies. I know it's going to be a good conversation.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
before we get there, tell us the story of Will. How did Will get to where you're at now? Tell us a little bit about some of the organizations you were part of, maybe the most recent one that you exited.
Yeah.
Yeah, how'd you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long and winding road for sure when it comes to it. The where kind of thing started for me is I was always like a geeky, nerdy person in high school, and that's where this journey kind of starts. Is I actually started my first company and the main company that I exited, Endless Events, when I was in high school. Started off as a DJ. It became an event production company, which is like lights, sound, video staging for events. Moved into corporate events and then started doing corporate event management. So you're talking about big conferences, conventions, that sort of stuff, and essentially handling all the details. We were really lucky that we built a kind of a forward-thinking technology first company, but also one that also utilized a lot of content marketing. I was a huge inbound HubSpot nerd and basically utilized that to educate planners and customers and brands and everybody in the events industry and really built a brand for Endless and also myself as an influencer within the events industry. And essentially that was my life for, since high school, age 17 until, let's see, 20 years basically. So like basically, yeah, until I was like now I think I'm turning 37 this year. I don't remember how old I am anymore. But like basically I think was turning 35. I think was when basically the time kind of came that I started realizing that like, hey, like I built this amazing leadership team. I built this whole entire company that ran on its own. It was time for basically me to explore hiring a CEO to replace me. So I basically went down that route, hired a CEO to replace me, and then like I think one of the most interesting things that I learned, and we can dive deeper into this if necessary, but the like you sometimes don't realize like how burnt out you are until you're finally out. Like and I had taken long breaks, multi-week breaks. I basically, it was exploring passions within the company. I didn't feel like I needed to be there for any reason on the day-to-day basis, but you feel like when you're 17 and this is your whole life basically of your early career, you've become very latched into it. And so I kind of like exited without it and then got out of it and basically realized I was like, wow, I'm really glad I can finally get out. And during that time, I ended up working for a couple different companies. One of my big ones was working for a company called Bizzabo, where we basically developed a smart badge where you were at a conference that allows you to click your badges together to instantly exchange contact information, and then allows you to track attendees' locations on site at events to gather that data, which is super cool. One of the most amazing technologies is actually a customer of it, and then I helped them scale it 5 times in less than a year. So that was really, really fun to get to do. And then I've gotten to work for an AI company, getting to help them do the same thing, basically for AI for events, and basically kind of get to hop around working for these different companies and doing some kind of like growth scaling stuff, all while also having kind of some passions outside of that in technology. And I kind of just came to this realization of like the last couple months that I was kind of like ready for a more of a break than that. And I was ready to launch WTF and kind of like start getting to enjoy, being on my own for a little bit and getting to. It's hard to say retired because I think it's so weird because I definitely would jump back into another project if it fits. But it's one of these things where like I'm stoked to basically get to choose to do anything that I want to do.
That's very good. And congrats, because that's a place in life a lot of people desire and don't get the chance to experience. So I'm excited that you're able to do that.
Thanks, buddy.
I want to chat a little bit more about just overall event marketing, event management, because that's actually something that's really near and dear to me in that a lot of our customers, we're a marketing company, we do paid advertising. A lot of our customers, they have events that we help them market for. And in fact, I was just on a call this morning with a company that has two events coming up in October, and we're talking about what's the strategy? How are we going to maximize this? Um, and I think one of the biggest things I see within event marketing or just events in general is how I don't know what the right word is, but you get all this money, all this time, you go to the event, and then it nothing comes from it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
You know, it's great conversations or great information that you learned, and then what,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so being able to have an amazing event, have success at the event, and then post the event, have the ability to really generate those sales or those leads or the whatever the relationships might be. So talk to me a little bit more about, in your mind, like what makes a successful event? What are some of the things? So let's speak directly to some of my customers who are in that event market, or rather they're going to events. What are some things that they should be thinking about?
Well, I think you guys are on the right track. So, like, my philosophy around marketing right now is that we're in kind of a turbulent space. One reason why I'm also glad that I don't have to run my company anymore is that we were very built on like content marketing and the inbound marketing process, and that was like super powerful for me because like people basically got education and then wanted to buy stuff from you based on the fact that you just posted a really helpful blog or a helpful video.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work anymore, right? It's not a couple different reasons why is there's tons of content out there's content overload, and then in addition to that too, there's also the fact that like nobody is really reading this stuff anymore, and on layer that on top of it the fact that now you can generate every type of content from podcasts to videos to blog posts nowadays using AI. So now it's like, this hard place where it used to generate this huge return, and it's a lot harder than it used to be. I think podcasts and video content are still probably the best forms of content out there because they're really hard to generate via AI. We could probably replicate our voices and maybe create some sort of good conversation, but I think just you and I talking back and forth is going to be very, very valuable and probably can't be replicated by AI yet. However, events. So this is, I promise, come back to events, come back to events. Events can't be replicated with AI, right? The fact that you can, you look at event attendance, it's still going up, and people are still seeing a ton of value in the education that's happening on site at events, and also that tons and tons of people are arriving at to try to make business decisions, make sales, all those things like that. I think it's one of the few places right now where it's a safe bet where if you put your money in, it doesn't feel like this weird, like I'm competing against AI to try to, be able to create brand awareness. So So speaking to everybody a little bit about that is that events are a great place to be investing money into, and I don't say that just because I'm an event guy. I just see it. That's one of the few places where you actually can get things done and have people's attention now. But I think right now, when it comes to like how do you generate the value you see from events, first things first, I think you just buying a booth and hoping to God that you're going to get some people walking in and are just going to want to buy something doesn't exist. Like it's like the idea of being like, I'm just going to put some ads up and all of a sudden I'm going to get sales. And we realize that it's a much larger strategy in which you do things. So, first thing I would recommend to most people is find where your existing customers, what events are they going to? So, if you ask them, hey, where are you going to? Where are you spending your time? Where are you traveling to? Where are you putting your, energy and focus into? If your customers are all going to one single conference, you have to be at that conference because that's the best way that you can get that in person interaction. That's going to build a deeper relationship and allow you to go even further and expand your accounts and all that fun stuff like that. So find out, first of all, where your existing customers are. Host a customer dinner at minimum. But if you can, try to turn it into a whole like shebang. Try to sit down and have a meeting with every single one of your customers. Bring your whole team out so they can all meet the customers as well. Especially in a world like I'm a huge remote work fan. I've been doing remote work for like a decade or longer now at this point. Any chance you can get to build an in-person relationship is huge. Now, here's the second part. Now, about like actual expansion and growth and how you're actually going to do it. So that's going to help you because your accounts are going to expand naturally on their own and people are going to want to give you more money because they like you and your friends and all those things like that. However, if you want to get more accounts, what I recommend you do is it's okay to have a booth there, but you have to have a larger strategy to that. So, for example, maybe it's something where you use your existing customers to bring people to the booth and bring their friends over. Maybe it's something like you need to be able to generate content for the conference. And I'm not talking about like a sales pitch. If you can't create an engaging presentation where you've gone and presented and people come up to you and say, wow, that was so educational, it's so helpful. Don't try bother presenting or find someone who can do it for you, I think at least. But generating content on site and speaking at conferences is also still very, very powerful. And one of my favorite things to do is go speak, generate value, and then tell people, hey, come back to the booth and I'll answer questions and I'll help share even more. The last piece of this, I think, as well, when it comes to it, is creating experiences. So, if you've never hosted an actual event before, start small by finding out what those industry conferences are and host an offsite event. By the way, I talked about customer dinners. I think those can be good because you already have the established relationship, you have things to talk about. But if you're trying to bring new people over, don't just invite a bunch of people to come and get dinner. It's so hard to make that a valuable experience. And plus, they're getting invited to a bunch of different dinners. What I would recommend instead is turn into an experience at minimum bowling, top golf, name it, something fun, go karting, whatever it may be. Go do those things because then it creates memories and it creates something bigger that you can attach it to. If you can tie it into some larger campaign or a theme that you're doing, even better. So start with that. Go to their industry conferences, host experiences outside of it. The night of each conference, you have like basically 3 nights to be able to do it. I highly recommend don't do it on the first night and don't do it on the last night. Try to aim for like right in the middle. The next thing I would recommend you do is once you've kind of done that and you're mastering it and people are starting to see value, you're starting to realize what your customers want from this, just host your own event. In my opinion, if you can start hosting your own event where you're having your employees and your teams be the thought experts that people can come in and attend, you're going to nail it. Look at every big brand out there that you respect. I bet you they're hosting their own conference because it works. Because you have full control of everything. You have full control of the sponsors. And you can really create a deep experience where someone's basically dedicating like 3 days for a 3-day conference to your brand, which I think is just so powerful. So that's like I think a high level strategy for how I would be looking at events now if I'm not already doing events and starting to utilize them. And obviously, like, when I tell people to host their own events, it's scary to be able to do these things. But, if you have budget, there's people that can do it for you, like agencies like my company used to do. But there's also like, there's tons of time that you have to slowly start to build these things. For example, look at HubSpot's inbound conference just happened, I think last week, 2 weeks ago. Don't like if you look at it now, you're gonna be like, wow, it's so amazing. How could I ever have my own inbound conference? Go look at pictures from year 1. I dare you to. And you're gonna be astonished that it started very small and took a very long time to build up. So
Very cool. Yeah, that's honestly, there's so much valuable information that you just shared there. Um, I'm gonna leave it right there because
because Will definitely talked way too
I
much.
actually Yeah, well, that's where I was going to go. Is like we could seriously just spend the whole time talking about that, and I have other things I want to chat with you about. But I'm actually going to share this immediately with one of my customers because I think it's extremely valuable to them. So thank you for that wisdom. I think that's
Awesome.
phenomenal. Let's go into WTF now. We before we started recording, we were talking about some of the emerging technologies, things that are really getting you excited. Um, Now, I'm not as technically intelligent as you are, so you're going to use words that I don't remember, but I do understand the
Totally.
concept of it. So the mesh network that you were
Oh
talking
yeah.
about, meaning kind of offline communications. This one I'm actually really interested in because I've got a friend of mine who has started a nonprofit that is doing something very similar in more remote areas, third world country type places. For example, right now, part of our team is based in the Philippines, and they're getting hit with one of the hardest tsunamis that they've ever had, period, but also this year for sure. And so when power goes down and all this stuff, they have the ability more geared towards emergency services to get their nodes in place and create that
Mhm.
mesh network that people can communicate more easily when there's no power or no internet. Uh, that's a bit of a way to tee up for you, but talk to us a little bit about what is the most exciting emerging technology right now? Like what are you really geeking out
Totally.
on?
Well, yeah, I mean, Meshtastic is what we were talking about pre-show. I would definitely recommend anybody if any interest at all in what Billy just talked about, go check it out. It's really cool. Like for like $30, you can pick up these little devices that you have, multiple of them. You essentially can create this mesh network across your entire city. One can transmit like up to 100 miles if you wanted it to. So go check
It's
that out. It's
crazy.
really cool.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about the thing that I'm most excited for, I think that's relevant because like at some point level, it's a little nerdy, right? Like like you gotta
Yeah.
like either like the use cases are natural disasters, you hike in your middle of
Yeah.
nowhere, or you're at a place that has low connectivity, like a music festival or something like that. Or you just you're geeking out on radios. But the thing that I think a lot of people need to I think start to pay attention to, I think right now is probably on face wearable devices. So smart glasses essentially. This is a space that I think is moving extremely quickly, and as of this last week, I think has had a major development that I think is starting to move it towards the future that I think we've been talking about for a long period of time through augmented reality and all those things like that. So, what I'm talking about essentially are smart glasses. So there's kind of a few different routes this goes down, and the classic example of this is that there's the one that you probably know about, which is things like Meta's VR headset. Totally forgetting the name of it. The
The
Quest. Thank you. I'm
Quest.
like totally forgetting what the Quest is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had VR for a long period of time. It's really exciting what I can do. You have Apple Vision Pro, which kind of blurs a little bit of VR and what we'll move into an AR in just a second. But the idea that like there's this big heavy thing you put on your face, but it has like the power of a computer that can render graphics and realistic vision and all those things like that. Super duper cool. But to be honest, like no one really wanted to wear a Vision Pro all day like Apple put in their ads. And, I think it's a little bit further away from being smaller. Then there's the other side of things, which is like the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, which is the idea that like everybody will wear normal glasses or sunglasses and be totally okay with it. But they have to be really small and light, which means that you can't, do a lot of technologies. For example, in the Meta Ray-Ban glasses you probably have heard about, they have speakers in them, they have a camera, and they have the ability to, basically do voice prompts and have like a headset on your face all the time. So it's kind of in that world I think where we're building towards, which might be like, especially like with ChatGPT's voice and things like that, where like maybe we don't have to have user interfaces and screens everywhere, but it all can be done via voice. But I think the thing that we've kind of learned is that there's just some things that require visual input or visual ability to see them. For example, it can say turn left here, but then if you get to that corner and you're like, wait, was that, did it say that 5 feet back and I'm supposed to walk into this restaurant, or am I supposed to turn left at the street? And like, versus like an arrow that shows you curving around the street as an example. So the exciting development with this that I think people may or may not know about is that Meta announced last week that they are coming out with their next set of the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, which will have a screen on it. And this is there's been a few companies kind of going after this, but before they were all monochromatic, meaning they were all like just green screen with green text and things like that, very basic, 1980s looking stuff. But now full color displays, you can see it in the daytime. And I think the most exciting thing is that they've come out and it's gonna be like $800, which is, sounds like a lot. But if you think about it, the latest Apple Watch Ultra was $800. You pay $1,000 for your phone. And also the Meta Ray-Ban glasses were originally like $400. So you're only talking about like a doubling in cost to be able to have
Yeah.
a screen on your face with a light wear pair of glasses. And I think this is the world that people need to start paying attention to, because there is a potential out there that this could be the next iPhone, the next smart device that everyone's using. That in the future, we may be relying less on looking at our phone screens all the time, but instead are wearing glasses that then show the information that we want to have on there. So there's obviously like a whole rabbit hole to kind of go down. But this is a technology that I've been following very, very closely. And I think that we're getting to this point where the normal looking glasses that didn't have any screens and things like that, and these big, heavy, bulky VR goggles are kind of merging together in the middle to create a experience where you can layer visuals on top of your vision, wearing normal glasses that don't weird people out.
That's really cool, and it's fun. It's actually very applicable to some research or what I was looking up here recently. I came really close to purchasing one of the Quest models. I don't
Yeah,
remember
probably like
like
the
the most
Quest 3 or
recent one,
whatever.
and yeah, I think that's what it was. And my whole point was, man, it'd be really cool while I'm flying, I could have my 60-inch
Oh,
monitor and be
yeah,
working and stuff like that. Nobody would be able to see. Like, that'd be really cool. But the immediate thought I had was, they're just
it's
bulky. It's
weight.
it's
Yep,
heavy,
totally.
4-hour flight. Like, uh, and then the funny thing is, I have an older version of those Ray-Ban sunglasses, and they're really
Definitely.
cool. I mean, like the sound quality, even when it's just in the part that goes by your ear, the
Totally.
sound quality is
Totally.
phenomenal. And for the most part, nobody around you can hear it. And it sounds like you and I are just
Totally.
talking
Totally.
like this. Um, but you're absolutely right. The functionality is very limited, right? And the visual element being that. So applying that, I've always been curious how that augmented reality element would be implemented at the lens level, and how you're able to keep it in focus, but also
Hmm.
focus
Hmm.
beyond. And then like all of the applications that I'm excited about, directions being one of them. But if there's a building and like Google Maps, and it's got the little marker that says this is US Bank or whatever it might be, right? Having those things pop up and being able to like click in and see more information, or maybe it recognizes a friend and I'm
Totally.
horrible with names. Like I'll
puts a
remember
puts
your
a name
face all
tag
day
on them for
long, but
you.
I'll be
I'm
like,
the same way.
"Yeah, exactly, exactly." So that's going to be really, really interesting.
I agree.
When did when did they say they're going to bring
End
those
of the
new ones
month.
out?
So 1 week from today, basically.
Wow.
So it's
Wow.
definitely moving this future. Like the thing I would recommend for most people is like, look, I'm not a big fan of what Meta is doing. I think they're one of the least trustworthy big tech companies out there, but they have a lot of money, which is what they've been pumping into
Yeah.
the space.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really cool to see. Google was demoing something like this at their latest conference. Apple obviously is working on it, but was going in the bigger glasses route. But I think that it's a really cool future. But like, I think we're going to see this future where it's like Meta, Apple, and Google fighting for what is the smart glass wearable to get. And
Yeah.
I think once Google comes out with theirs, I think that's going to be pretty incredible. I would suspect in the
Yeah.
next year you'll probably see them announce one that's probably $800 to $1,000, and it'll be made by Google, and we'll be able to run Android apps at least and things like that. And I'm an
Yeah.
iOS guy and an Apple world. I used to be a huge Android guy, but like it's one of these things where like, hey, now that Google's doing it, I have a feeling Google can run with it a little bit further than Meta can, because Meta just has a
Yeah.
lot less software built under their ecosystem. So
Yeah. 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 I'm very much 50-50. I'm iOS products and then
oh, nice, yeah,
Google
yeah, yeah.
business,
Oh, I love
so
Google Workspace. Yeah,
uh
Gmail's great.
I could see. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's easy, it's user friendly, and I think absolutely when Google comes out with their version of it, with the fact that it'll be connected to all of the applications
Oh
I
yeah.
use now,
Oh my gosh.
that's going to be a
And
game
like I
changer.
think that to your point, like I think a lot of people hear this like facial recognition thing and kind of like freak out a little bit more over it, but like I think we're
Freak out.
getting to
Yeah.
this future where people are becoming more and more comfortable with it. And at some point when someone makes that killer app that recognizes your friend, it's going to start maybe like with your contacts. You upload photos of all your contacts, it will recognize your
Yeah.
contacts. But at some point like people are going to like want something like that. Like I'm imagining a future keeping in the events industry where you know where to go inside the conference hall because it points you where to go with directions. You don't need name badges
Yeah.
because it facial recognizes everybody. You can do things like potentially even finally realize this like hybrid event dream where you can attend an event virtually and then put those people in like a hybrid environment where their holograms are all around the seats and at
Yeah.
minimum there's a chat showing up on the side of the screen that shows people chatting that are watching online. Like there's a lot of power I think in this market that's going to end up coming, and I think it's going to be one that's going to be extremely disruptive. And it's coming super duper fast. I think we've been talking about how like it's coming, but like this announcement by Meta
Yeah.
is basically to say $800, and I have no idea, they could be like losing like $800 on each headset they sell, but they've
Sure.
proven
Sure.
that hey, we can sell this for $800 and it's pretty darn good. And the initial reviews from the conference from people
Yeah.
using it really, really like it. So, yeah, we'll see at the end of the month once it starts
Cool.
coming in everybody's pockets. But I don't think that Meta is a company that would release something half baked.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, who knows? Maybe one of the next podcasts we're on, we'll be
Yeah,
doing it with
exactly,
our glasses
exactly.
on. So, um, well, that's good. I want to, in the interest of time, I think so far this has been just a phenomenal conversation. I love geeking out on what's coming down the pike, but I would love to get your knowledge and experience on growth and scale. Obviously, given the success that you've achieved with the lifestyle that you're now able to afford, both time and money, I'm really curious to talk to you about some of the keys of success for how you grew your organization. That's a sales and a marketing and brand perspective. And then also don't be afraid to kind of spit in, hey, this we tried and it was a complete disaster. I mentioned to you earlier is like I fail all the time. My goal is to take two steps forward, one step back. And if I do fall, I want to fall forward, right? And so if I can learn from others, then that might save me some face plants. But talk to us a little bit about some keys to success for growth and scale in your organizations that led you to the point that you were able to
Definitely. I
exit
think a lot of
successfully.
like honestly a lot of my success is definitely related to that inbound marketing, content marketing jump that I ended up making. Obviously, like I said earlier, I don't know if it's the area that I would and be investing money into 100% now. However, I think that there is an analogy there to kind of to vibe with in some sort of ways. And that is the idea that the reason why I end up doing content marketing was twofold. One, I was always looking for like what's the next thing? Where are people going? What are people trying? And was funny is the events industry, it's kind of a laggard kind of industry because it's very like, Murphy's Law, anything can go wrong. So let's try to like focus on what's rock solid now versus experimenting with it in the future, which is like ironic for why I love toying with new technologies. But that you can sometimes exploit that in some industries. The ones that are falling behind, find those industries, and if your industry is one of those, like don't be afraid to like look at what tech is doing and being like, hey, let's do that same thing. Look at it right now. Like, how do all the tech companies announce their products? Events, right? How do they? Where do they exhibit all their stuff? Events, right? Examples of that sort of stuff. So, with that being said, though, just telling you to innovate and try to go for crazy things is really hard to do. But here's a very very valuable advice I'd have for you too is think to yourself like how do I buy? How do I purchase things? And I'm not just talking in a B2B context, like even a B2C context. And I think that's one reason why that I ended up being super successful was that I was very involved in like social media marketing, again, content marketing very early on. I remember when we were making Facebook groups to promote our DJ company and try to get all the high school dances and college events when we were in, college and high school. And I basically realized I was like, look, we're spending all of our time on social media now, so why don't I try to like create a Facebook group and do all these things? And then they eventually became Facebook pages, and like this whole idea of social media marketing was like a myth and an idea, and like people were like, a lot of people would be like, why it's not even worth the time? Like, who the heck is going to use Facebook to find anybody? And now today, you'd obviously be laughing if I said that. But I think one of the things that we have to do more often is ask that question. And I think one thing I'll also challenge too is as I've gotten older, I've realized you get stuck in your ways in a lot of ways too. So more recent advice I'd give with that too is that, while you might not do it that way, I would also look at potentially a younger demographic and ask them how they do things. Granted, if the younger demographic isn't the one that's purchasing, for example, like let's say you run a valve company and all your purchasers are like in their 60s and 70s and things like that, you probably don't need to be asking about TikTok marketing, right? Like and that's a total valuable idea. And I hated this a lot when I was first like starting my company, because I used to have a lot of people who were older tell me that why would I do this and things like that. And then it turned out to be super successful for me. But that was also because like I was kind of playing this super duper long game. And also, like, to be honest, like I think we ended up seeing is that content marketing and social media marketing ended up coming for that demographic eventually. I, again, like TikTok is an example. I'm actually like very anti TikTok, believe it or not. I'm not, again, you heard me say I don't like algorithms, but like I'm starting to feel meh around the idea of like using an algorithm to at all keep up with my friends, at all learn about new things. But instead, I'm using specific subreddits on Reddit. I'm, following a lot of RSS feeds on my RSS readers. I'm like very much curating where I can get the information I need to get it from. But I'm also in a very, very rare case as well. I know there's a lot of people out there that get their information from an algorithm through TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook, that sort of stuff. So to go back to the advice I'll actually give versus ranting on about social media is that, you know, think to yourself like,
That's
hey, how
good.
do I do these things? And if you're at minimum not doing that and you're potentially one of the target demographics of what you're trying to do, you need to start moving into that immediately. And then if you are feeling like there is a newer generation coming in and you're starting to feel like me a little bit, which is like even now today, I feel like because I'm avoiding TikTok, I'm losing out on potentially something that's happening. Um, you need to make sure that you're talking to that next generation or somebody who is into that sort of thing, and bringing that in and taking a risk and going after it. Because to be honest, like all the riches are like in the they say riches are in the niches, but like the riches are in these like little exploited areas where you can double down into and go and focus into versus just doing everything everyone else is doing. And I think that's also a great way to also just think about it is like if 90% of people are doing it this way, is there really even room for you to be there? Like, or should you try to zag and try to do something completely different and go after this other piece of it? So that's one of my like growth strategies when I'm talking about innovation and like kind of where things are going in the future. And I also too like think to myself too, like what are the leading technologies that are coming out, and can I see in the future that everybody will be using it? So for example, like I think that when I was getting in social media marketing, like it was just a transition where everyone was starting to get iPhones, right? And I started feeling like I was like, oh, these apps that you can be social with each other. Like I could see people using their phones all the time rather than using computers, and I got a little lucky on that bet. To talk about like failures though, and what I've done, one thing that is for sure is that like one of the big things that I realized is that sometimes you can also realize that you know um sometimes you think that like some strategy is just going to continue to keep working and working and working and working forever. So, for example, in the content marketing space, one reason why I chose it was that I thought to myself, well, I buy everything by researching blogs and looking at top 10 articles and, researching online. So then I'll do that and being super successful for me. And then I ended up trying to say, hey, let's just keep doing this. Let's keep doing this. And what I didn't realize is at some point there was like, and especially in the events industry, a lot of money from VCs started coming in. So tech companies started creating more content. There's a lot of noise. And then also, I didn't kind of expect that there would be this kind of like apathy towards content. I thought to myself, I was like, well, I'm still reading blogs, I'm still watching video content and things like that. And I could have kept doing this forever and ever and ever, thinking to myself, yeah, this is going to work. But I think the thing is that at some point you have to realize that there might be a way that the trend starts to die and what you're trying to do will stop working. And I think that's a big lesson I had to learn. And I was kind of lucky that I exited my company and hired a CEO to replace me and kind of get out of it and not have to really be focusing on what the next thing in big marketing is anymore. Because, you know, honestly, like that was all starting to happen to me where I was starting to put more money into content, more money into articles, starting to do TikTok reels. We made so much freaking content and I was expecting the same results. All the while, we were starting to see that our sales development reps were not getting phone connections anymore. They're just getting voicemails, and no one would call them back. And not most of our sales was not coming from those sales development reps, but instead was coming from our existing customers, referring people. And what I wish I had done maybe 2 years earlier is to start to wind that down faster to save that money instead of building a big sales development rep organization, but then instead start focusing on, okay, what can I start to maybe do more customer based marketing, maybe start to like invest in doing events ourselves maybe earlier, maybe starting to avoid written content and starting to focus towards video content even harder. There was just a bunch of different things I think for us to start doing to start moving towards that. And a lot of that had to do with the pride. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that you can have in this is like marketing, because especially if you are a small organization, the brand is tied to you. The brand is literally everything that you do. And sometimes every like the actions, my speaking on stage, I'm in the video content, I get to make it. It's a lot of the ideas came from me. So a lot of that was pride. And then to have to start shifting into something different, I think would be very very hard for me to do, and I was starting to see that, and I'm glad I started to kind of make that decision to start trying something different. And what's funny is our company ended up doing a pivot and focusing more on customers and referrals and things like that, and kind of backing down from the content marketing, reinvesting that money, and then now they're seeing their most profit they've ever seen before, and the company's doing better than it's ever done before.
That's good. Yeah, there's so much good there. Absolutely. I think being able to know when something's not working and to pivot quickly. That's one element. I think also when you were talking about knowing or thinking about how you buy, and then also the younger generation, meaning whoever's coming behind you, immediately I was thinking, there's a couple areas I should probably adjust in how I'm, our sales process, right? So I think you nailed so many good points, and I absolutely love it. And honestly, this has been a really incredible conversation. I say that genuinely. I've really appreciated it. Now, I have not
I
told you
like it.
about this. I've got a quick lightning round. I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna ask you just a few questions, really simple.
I'm warmed up. I
So
got
with
doing my
that, are you
jumping
ready to get
jacks.
going? I love it. All right. Well, good. Maybe this first one's gonna tell us a little
Oh,
bit more.
tea,
Coffee
100%.
or
I'm a
tea?
tea guy through and through. You put coffee and I
All
sip it. Like I accidentally every once in a while grab my fiance's drink because it looks like a chai latte or something like that. I go, ugh, coffee. Ew. I
right.
have a huge tea collection in my house. It's one of our favorite things to do when
That's
we
good.
travel is to grab teas from like all over the world.
I love it. I love it. All right. What's one tool or system you rely on to keep your
Oh man,
organization running smoothly?
ChatGPT, obviously. You know what I think? Let me try to think of
Yeah.
something really obscure and different. But I would definitely say that here's an example of something is trying to focus on finding tools that are a little bit more privacy focused and making that transition over to them. So I'll use an example of this is like Kaji. It's a Kagi. It's a search engine, and you can replace your Google, and the search results are honestly just as good as Google. I primarily use ChatGPT to answer almost everything and give me all the information I need, but just the ability
Yeah.
to like eliminate a little bit of a Google product, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, I think just thinking in that way is kind of important today. Is to start thinking to yourself, how can I make myself
Yeah.
less reliant on these massive tech companies and instead have something that maybe gives you just a little bit more privacy?
Yeah, I like that. And you mentioned something similar earlier with the algorithms. And just this last week, this actually happened. I really like, I'm not on
Oh yeah,
TikTok, but I
yeah.
like
I can't give up
YouTube
YouTube.
Reels,
It's so hard to give
which
up
is a
YouTube.
lot of TikTok. Yeah, dude, it's amazing.
Yeah.
That and then like X and a little bit of Instagram. And honestly, I was sitting there going, I feel like I could recognize that I'm in
Yes.
my own
Oh,
echo
thank you.
chamber. And I don't post on anything, but I everything I was hearing was all the same. And I used to not be that way. And I because I could see everybody's point of
Yeah,
view, and
yeah.
this isn't even political or anything, but it's just like, hey, what's your take here? What's your take here? And now all of a sudden it's like
Mhm.
everything is the same. Now either everybody has the same
Mhm.
belief, which I don't think is true, or my algorithm is just so messed up that
Totally.
I just want to
Totally.
hit the reset button. So I think what you're talking about with Kaji, as well as building out your own RSS feeds, Reddit Reddit, I think is really a cool way to curate your own information that will be not or that
Totally.
is not
It
subject
takes a
to an
little bit
algorithm.
more
I think
time,
you're
but
onto something
man,
there.
once you do it, it's super duper nice to know
Yeah,
like I vetted these sources. They are what I care about. And to be honest, like everyone always thinks like, well, what if I miss out on this or XYZ? I can tell you that if it's important enough, it will make its way to you. I'm talking about news primarily, I
it'll
think for
get to
most
you.
people is where they start to think about it. But I think
Yeah,
it's super duper smart. I think like more people need to recognize that they're in echo chambers, no matter whether like what again, not even making this political. Like we are
yeah,
all in echo chambers, every single person, and you have to recognize it. And every
yep,
once in a while, I just recommend like find all those additional sources. Like you probably I don't know if you see it a lot on YouTube, but like Ground News is a source that they like pretty much every YouTuber promotes. Yeah, it's
yes.
like it basically
I've been
shows you
hearing
like
about that
both
one.
sides of news, and but like to me it's sometimes that's a little
Yeah,
much too. Like I'd really try to avoid as much of like the general news as possible for my mental health, but just ability to like say
yeah,
like, oh, I can go into this other
yeah,
side and see like, oh, this is what it looks like. Or at minimum, I think most people is to admit you're in an echo chamber. So then that way when something pops up that you disagree with,
yeah.
whether it's, that wearable glasses are going to be the future of and the next iPhone, moment, or whatever it may be, you
Right.
can say to yourself, well, if I disagree with that, maybe there's another side. So,
Yeah. Yep. I love it. All right, couple more. What's your favorite book, podcast, or
okay.
resource that's
So
influenced you the
this one's
most?
hard because I have so many. I use a thing called Feedly, which brings in tons of RSS things. I don't read as many books as I used to use, so I have lots of blogs. Obviously, again, I'm on Reddit as an example, so I read a lot of articles and things like that. However, I will give a resource because that's what everyone really craves. I always know these lists because I love these lists. Newsletter to check out is called The Installer. It's by The Verge, which I think Verge is really
Okay.
good. I don't know if I necessarily agree with them gating by money all their articles and stuff, but the installer is amazing. Look up the Verge installer. It's every Sunday. David, I believe is his name, writes this newsletter, and it's just like, here's the cool things that he finds. And then he does somebody where they screen share all their favorite apps that are on their phone and like how their iPhones or Android phones are set up. And then they have like a
Cool.
section where it's crowdsourced. Like every week, people email in like, here's something cool from a TV show to an app to a tool or whatever it may be. And it's very much like up my alley where I'm like, that's what I crave. Is like if I can find something that makes my life 0.5% better, if I can do that, what is that, 200, 300%, or 200 to 1,000 times, I make myself 100% better,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so I very much think that
Yeah.
way. But it's a great newsletter. I believe it's completely free to subscribe to. It comes every Sunday. It's a really, really cool one. And it's funny because it's hard for me to find people on the internet where I'm like, you are me on the other side of the world. And David, I think, is one of those people.
That's awesome. That's a good one. I'll check it out. All right, two more. What's one bucket list item you've already
Lots.
checked off in your life?
I think I completed my first initial bucket list, and now like we're on V2, and now I'm getting married and stuff like that. We have a shared bucket list. But let me think of a really
There
really
you
good
go.
one. Because there's definitely some that are a little bit crazier. Um, I've definitely done crazy things like we did Death Valley in a week. You basically are like living off of like nothing for a week. I've done crazy stuff like 2 months in backpacking through
Wow.
Europe and while working, 3 months in the truck camping while working. What other crazy stuff have we ended
So
up
cool.
doing? I performed in front of 100,000 people at one point in my life, which is pretty cool. That was a headlining show, which was really,
Nice.
really cool. I've done a lot of stuff, but I'm trying to think of like something really, really impactful I can tell a story about. But there's some micro ones I think we can at least go to. But yeah, I will share one bucket list I
Yeah, I
do
like
want
it.
to. Eventually, I'm
That's good.
terrified of falling. I want to learn how to fly
Yeah.
helicopters. So that's a long term bucket list.
Okay. That you actually
Oh, let's
answered
go.
You actually just answered the next one, which is
Oh, I'm
what
not
some you're
working on
working
it.
on. So
I'm
good
very
work. I
far
love it.
from it for sure,
Um,
but I will at some point in my life.
you will. Someday you'll check it off the list. I love it.
Thank you so
That's
much,
good.
brother.
Will, this has been really awesome. Hey, if our listeners want to
Honestly,
connect with
LinkedIn's
you,
probably the
what's one of the
easiest
best
way.
ways to get
I
in
I
touch?
barely check it anymore because now I have the community and stuff. So, but LinkedIn is one of the easiest ways. So you can search Will Curran, or to be honest, just go to willcurran.com. That's the fastest way. I list like all the projects I'm working on. All my different like various obscure social medias like my last FM and my Spotify links are on there as well. So honestly, just go to willcurran.com. That's also best way. I have like contact forms and hire me to speak and all that fun stuff is on there.
Absolutely. I actually checked out the website. I think it's one of the most informative personal
Thank you.
resume websites, and I love it. So, very good, man. I appreciate it. Well, for everybody else, this is a wrap of this episode of Scaling Smart. I'm your host, Billy Mitchell, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Scaling Smart podcast, where we have conversations with real people who have real stories, who have learned how to scale smart.